So, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Greisamer, take it away.
Here we are. Okay, thank you for that introduction, Anne. And so let's get started. Don't make the same mistakes. Learner development. Yeah, it's kind of better like teacher development. But in today's talk, I want to talk about helping deal with online learning and dealing with anxiety. And so what I'm going to talk about is my last year's first semester when we were all online. I did a survey for the first semester. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I want to get more specific to the significant findings that's assignment overload. And then I want to give some advice to teachers. And yeah, I'm not going to talk that long, so hopefully you can give us your thoughts on the topic. So while you're listening to the talk, try to just think of two things. One is, what have you done differently this year compared to last year of online teaching? So it's a little bit different. Last year we started off late, but it was all online. But this year we had a couple weeks in class, and then we had to go online. So it was a little bit different. And how to avoid overloading assignments? Is there something that you do that you can share with us? That's what I want to ask you. So anyway, my name is Michael Greisamer. I'm American. I live in Kobe, and I work mostly at Kobe Gaidai. But I teach at different schools. That's me at the last PanSig conference, in Nishinomiya 2 years ago. So my research is based on anxiety, and that's kind of what today's talk is connected to. And so what is anxiety? Anxiety is this feeling of dysphoria, or it's tension or worriness, like this guy falling into the hole. I show this to my students: butterflies in your stomach. That's what we say. Oh, I have butterflies in my stomach when you're nervous. But actually, anxiety doesn't come from the feeling in your stomach. It comes from the brain, and more specifically, those little red dots, which is the amygdala. The amygdala, which releases chemicals, and these chemicals are used as messengers by the sympathetic nervous system to trigger anxiety. So this anxiety for students is called foreign language anxiety. And it's kind of in the middle between facilitating and debilitating anxiety. You know, facilitating means like it can motivate students if you scare them enough, or the fight or flight attitude. But we're going to focus more on the debilitating part, where they just get blocked and they don't say anything and they feel nervous. So that's where foreign language anxiety is. So the survey that I did was a student-centered first-year online survey. Why do a survey? Well, you know, it's new conditions. There was new data, and I have experience with my doctorate. I also did a large multi-country survey for students about anxiety. And it's interesting to hear from the students, because that's where we get the data for learning. So my online survey was Japanese university students. I had about over 600 participants, and I used Google Form, and I made a survey, and the collection period was July and August. And I asked teachers to give it to their students. And I had 20 items. 18 were Likert scale multiple choice, strongly agree to strongly disagree, so 5 points. And then 2 open-ended questions. What gives the most stress from online learning, and what gives the most joy from online learning? So yeah, I'm not really going to go into that part. Let's go to that. So let me show you some questions and results from that survey last year. So what grade were you? And most of them were first-year students, almost 60%. And it turns out that most of the 60%, or of all of them, were women. So high percentage women first-year students. enjoy the freedom of online classes? Did you enjoy the freedom of online classes? And this percentage was pretty high, about 45% strongly agreed or agreed that they enjoyed the freedom of online learning. Not having to travel or commute. And this one also was over about half agreed or disagreed. And these results are pretty predictable with the questions that you ask, like not being able to meet classmates. So I made this a negative one. I enjoyed not being able to meet with my classmates, and this was very high, more than 60% strongly disagreed. So it's the answers that I was looking for. But today, the one I want to focus on is too much homework. Too much homework. And for this one, was too much homework a major source of stress for me? And this one was also very high. 56% agreed or strongly disagreed or agreed with this. So too much homework. So not only this study, but also other studies have shown that, like a study from Duke University, that more than 56% of students say that homework is a major reason for stress at school. You think too much homework? All right, I'll get that later. Okay. So overloading assignments, over 56% said that they had too much homework. So why do you think this is? Well, kind of specifically for online learning, maybe they had difficulty with the instructions that we gave them. Poor internet connection is always a problem. Their study environment, poor time management, and instructors' lack of online training and experience. Now, I graduated from Anaheim University, and that was mostly an online course. So I had training, with online learning with that. But other teachers, it was like the first time for them to teach. So how can we avoid overloading of assignments? All right. Yeah, there are some things that I thought of doing. Be more specific, clear, precise, step-by-step instructions. All right. So, for example, here's an assignment, a Flipgrid assignment, and it starts, with the goal of the assignment. You want to let them know the goal of the assignment, and then each step is numbered. And the first one, read and understand my instructions in this post. So this is just saying that this is part of the assignment, and it is. For the students to understand, this is talking more about asynchronized than when you would be telling them like this on Zoom. So just for them to read your assignment, that's a lot of work right there. And then you want to number, give the time for each instruction, so they will have an idea of how much time it's going to take, or how much time you expect them to spend. Now, who says that they're going to do it, or how long it's going to take them? Every student is different, but yeah. So we don't want to overpower our students and knock them out. So other things to avoid to do is to be consistent in your format. Always have the same format. Set deadlines. We want to let them know, even though they don't like deadlines, what they need to do, and then follow up frequently. Ask the students, do they understand? Are they doing everything that needs to be done? Another good task is called a task-free activity. And I learned this from my professor, Brian Tomlinson at Anaheim University. And what he said was that what he does is every class in the beginning, he just gives them a rant. He gives them a joke or a story. And it's something that helps the student, so they feel that they're not being tested on it. So they don't have to suffer the anxiety from tests or studying. They can just listen. I know we want to make them participate, but it's also important that they feel relaxed in the classroom. All right. So, you know, what is too much? Duke University says a common rule of thumb is that students should study 3 hours for each credit hour of the course. And the Learning Center of University of Oregon recommends that you spend at least 2 or 3 hours per course. But you know, this is American universities. I don't know how much we can expect from our students, but it seems that that there was just an overload last semester. So what I'm trying to say here is that how can we not make the same mistakes that we made last year? Maybe you didn't make any mistakes, but if you did, you don't want to make the same mistakes as before. So yeah, so how about you? Why don't you tell us what have you done differently this year compared to last year, and how to avoid overloading of assignments? All right. Do you think too much homework question was only for English courses or for courses they took? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't know if it was just for English or not, but for my survey, you know, it was just the English classes.
Yeah, Michael, can you go back to the gallery view, please?
Yeah.
Stop the screen share. Not that I want people to see my face, but.
Oh, gotcha. So stop sharing?
I think we've all pretty much got your message. So yeah.
All right.
Thanks for the thanks for the talk. At my school, which is a science university, the science teachers would normally just have a lecture and then maybe something at mid-semester and final semester. But in order to assess online the attendance of students, they were told to perform some activity that the students had to hand in. So what happened was, unfortunately, every science teacher required a 1,000-word essay from their students. And when you get 15 classes a week, and then they got to go over to English class, which would normally have some kind of homework, yeah, they felt really overloaded. So we can't counteract the other teachers, but it was important for us to gauge how much we were overloading. So the only one point I can tell you I did was I tried to do work that they started in the class, say handed them a Microsoft Word worksheet, gave them some of the answers or whatever, and then they would complete it as a homework with a deadline, rather than just giving it to them and saying, here, do it.
Right.
So they get a little head start on it, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Shirley mentioned in the chat, final exams canceled. Everyone just had to do reports. Everyone just had to hand in reports.
Oh God, I wouldn't do that, but that's not me. I have a lot of students.
Could I just clarify that point?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm not saying you did that, but
no. So the problem was I was fortunate. My course, I didn't have to change pretty much anything, and the skills that are focused on in my courses are listening, speaking skills. So my students aren't usually, they're not writing reports as a regular thing, and I don't have final exams. I have continuous assessment. So but my students were complaining that yes, they were overwhelmed by homework, and it was from their other courses where teachers, as you said, many of them maybe didn't have much experience, but a lot of the teachers that would have done a final exam where students had to come in and sit down and couldn't do that were replacing those with reports. And so they were getting all of this additional thing. So one thing I tried to do to counterbalance that a little bit, because my students did used to have some written homework, weekly written homework to respond to materials that they had to watch and then answer some questions for. And I thought, why am I having them write the answers? They can just do a video recording of the answers and actually tell me the information, which is consistent with the skills that I'm trying to promote, and also hopefully would take them a little bit away from as much screen time, and especially typing, because I think, you know, I was concerned about issues of RSI and various things for my student. So actually for me, that was a positive result, because I realized that why haven't I been doing this for the last 10 years? And I've had to sort of experiment a little bit with how to do it in terms of setting up rubrics for those things and looking at the time management issue for me and the 3 part-time teachers that are following the same course. So that's sort of something to think on. But it did help me modify things so that in a better way, that irrespective of whether I'm in a class or online, I'm going to keep that modification. So that was a positive outcome for me, and hopefully for my students. The other thing I would just mention with regard to Michael, your results, and firstly, thank you. I really liked your conciseness in the presentation. Lots of information, very useful, and bang, 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 it was all there. Great. So I did a survey with my students at the end of last year, and I found that about between 50 and 60% preferred the online classes with me. So not in all of their classes, because, you know, classes are different and they have different needs and things. So the 60% who said they preferred the online classes, 100% of them gave academic reasons. They had more study time because they had less travel time. They were able to work at their own, all sorts of, it was all academically focused. Of the other 45, 50% who were really sort of gagging to go back to face-to-face classes and get back to university, 100% of them gave their reason as wanting to see their friends. So one thing that worries me a little bit about the debate in Japan, or the lack of debate in Japan generally, is there seems to be an assumption that online learning is inferior to face-to-face learning. And even Monbusho seems to underlie their statements about things as well. But I think in countries where we've had online classes for many, many years, and where people are paying the same as attendance at a brick and mortar institution, and standards are considered to be the same if you've done a distance learning course as to if you've attended a brick and mortar university, I don't think there's that sort of understanding here. And a lot of the decisions made by my university seem to be driven by both students and parents' perceptions about the lack of standard and lack of quality that they would be getting online. And to be fair, I think probably a lot of people in Japan haven't had the experience or training to do that well. But I think it's an issue that the assumption is it's inferior to be learning online. Because quite honestly, my experience from last year, my students, their speaking and listening improved much better, and they were doing more than they would in a regular face-to-face class.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense, Shirley. There is a niche. There definitely is a niche for online learning in Japan, and it's kind of being forced down their throat. But you know, yeah, it's good for a lot of people. And you're right about the continuous assessment. That's probably the best way. Yeah. Yeah, good. Anybody else?
Well, as I just put in the chat here to kind of take off from one of Shirley's points, at my school, the top 2 teachers that were chosen by the students in all courses were 2 science teachers, and they were the most tech savvy people around. Actually, one's psychology and one's physics. And it's all the other guys that just sat there and never showed their face and just droned on, because that's what they normally would have done standing in front of their students. I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't like anything like that, but yeah, it was lack of knowledge on how to do an online course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't just they wanted to go back and see their friends. They certainly did at my school too. But they hated how the lectures were presented and then getting these 1,000-word essays every week.
Yeah. But Mike, you made a really good point up top about Anaheim. Both of us experienced with that. Having been an online student, makes it a little bit easier for a teacher to kind of get what the experience is like, and to have seen good practice and bad practice and kind of try to figure that out. I think that was quite helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, Anaheim University is great. There's like a lot of high ranking teachers. You know, we had Rod Ellis like every week. You know, he's just like on his hotel bedroom, you know, doing his lectures. Yeah, so you know, you get used to it. Yeah.
One thing I found interesting observing my colleagues, so none of my classes are bigger than probably about 30 students. So I do have a very specific kind of teaching situation that lends itself to group work and pairs and smaller things. But my colleagues who were teaching lecture classes, one thing that confused me was I thought that it would be a great advantage for them to have, for example, a TA be doing their lectures online, so that their students are watching them as they do, and that their students could be sending in questions in real time via chat. So a lecturer would have the opportunity to be rectifying things at the time of the lecture. I thought that would have been a boon, but the few times that I mentioned it to people, they looked at me like I had 3 heads. So I kind of feel that in many ways, people were in a sort of very resistant mindset about online. And I understand last year it was new, so it was kind of a big panic mode for a lot of people. But this year, we've all had some experience at it, which just very briefly leads me to something that, Michael, you asked the question of what would I be doing different this year? So I have had a big problem this year. I loved online last year. And as I said, for me personally, in terms of the results of my students' skills improvement, it was better than face-to-face. The beginning of this year, our university was pushing face-to-face, so I got a medical certificate so that I could teach online. However, my students, of course, most of them were coming to campus for other activities. So logistically, it actually turned out to be a nightmare because they were in a single classroom. I got that blown out to 3 different classrooms, but there still would be maybe 5 or 6, 7 students in a single room. So all the issues of feedback and all of the reasons, or many of the reasons why it was successful last year, when people were sitting alone in their room and seemed to be much more comfortable to speak than they would normally, all of that was undercut and subverted. And so it was actually worse than either online or teaching face-to-face. So I haven't really found a way around that yet. So if anybody's got any suggestions or ideas of how that might work better, I'm totally open to them.
I'm really sorry to interrupt you guys, but the time for the session's up. And if you'd all like to unmute your mics and give Mike a round of applause.